Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. So, I have a special guest today, someone that I met at a local record show about a month ago, who really has a very interesting story to tell and a background about the Beatles. And since I'm a huge Beatles fan, I wanted to share that with you as well. So, let's take off on this next audio excursion. Welcome, everybody, and back here at the audio excursion at Safe and Sound, Texas. I have a special guest today, and she has written a book about the Beatles, my favorite band. And I met this lady at a local record show here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area a few weeks ago, and she went to the Beatles Fest 3 weeks ago in New York and has just gotten back. And her name is Patti Gallo-Stenman. We're going to call her Patti because that's her Beatles name. And she's written a book called Diary of a Beatlemaniac, a Fab Insider's Look at the Beatles Era. And Patti, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, David. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say after meeting you and your daughters as well is fun is a word that is native to you. I know you've really taken this all very much to heart, and it's very nostalgic to you as it is to me. And a lot of us who went through this era, it's a very interesting perspective I think we have on it. So it's great to share it with other people.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
So we'll spend some time. I've set some questions to ask Patti, but I guess I'd like to kind of just get her to tell us just a Cliff's Notes version of her journey and how things got started with her in the Beatles and how old you were and what kind of events you were first involved in, if you'd like to share that with us.
Sure. Well, actually, so much of it is in my book, but what happened is I was 14 years old in 1964, and I was just ripe for the chase. It was like the right time for music. And the Beatles came on the scene. I'm from Philadelphia, and the Beatles came on the scene that February. I saw them a little bit beforehand on the Jack Parr show and a couple other places. So it was very exciting for 14, 15, and 16-year-old girls to see this group that just came out of nowhere and from England, no less. And I was at an all-girls Catholic school at the time, and it was very boring. And we had just come out of the winter where JFK was assassinated the earlier that November. And everybody was kind of in a very sad, dark mood. So to have these young guys come from England with this incredible music, and me being just at the right age, it happened at the right time and the right place for me. I kind of joined with some of the girls at school into little Beatle buddy groups, which I call them later in my book, Beatle buddy groups. And we joined together, and we just went crazy, buying albums, writing poetry, doing the whole 9 yards. And it lasted for, I was a freshman. It lasted probably right before my senior year, when we got a lot more serious, So it was a good time. And the 60s were an amazing time for music, as we all know. It was just the right time at the right place to do this.
Right. Yeah, I remember it well. You were a little older than I was. I was only like 6 or 7, but still very impressionable. And I did a video not long ago about the Beatles, and I talked about the whole mood of the country and the perspective of that, because I said they were kind of in a funk. Everybody, And then when the single got released right before Christmas, and it went nuts, and it was quite endearing. So when we see those girls that were on, like Ed Sullivan, that kind of is an indicator of the kind of euphoria that was going on across
Yes.
the nation, not just in New York, but across
Mm-mm.
the nation.
That's true. And we always thought that those girls that were in the audience in New York were very lucky girls. And actually, I have a friend of mine who also lives in Texas, and she was one of those girls,
Wow.
actually. And Ed Sullivan, it's amazing, you know, you bump into different people who experience this in different ways. But I would have given my eye teeth to be one of those girls on the Ed Sullivan show, you know.
Sure. Yeah. The funniest part when I look back at those videos now, and I'll probably insert some here in our actual playback of this, is looking at some of the guys and their reactions, like, "Oh my gosh, where am I? What am I doing here?" Because it was
True. That's true. There
yeah,
weren't, you know, it's funny because I went to an all-girls school, but of course we would see the boys at different time, and I had some friends that were male, and they just weren't as crazy over the Beatles. You know, the girls were the hysterical ones, and
yeah.
it was actually very interesting. I can't really name one boy Beatlemaniac that I knew. It was just a bunch of us young 14 and 15-year-old girls.
Yeah. No, I was really big into Ricky Nelson at the time,
Oh
and
yeah.
I remember thinking to myself at that age, I thought, "Uh-oh, Ricky Nelson is in trouble."
Ain't that the truth? Oh
Yeah.
my God. But and it's another thing we could maybe talk about later is fan clubs, because Ricky Nelson was one of the first, along with Elvis, to have a lot of fan club interest from young girls.
Hmm.
And along with the Mickey Mouse Club kids, but that we're going back a little bit,
Yeah, right.
but Ricky Nelson was really big with the girls and with the fan clubs. I remember that.
Yeah. And I see we have Sir Paul standing there next to you.
Oh yeah.
You've told me stories about that. That's a Halloween favorite of you.
Yes, yes. Sir Paul lives in my foyer, and actually, I did buy him to when I would go out and sell books. I could use him, you know, as part of the stand. But he's too big to take along, so he's living in my foyer now, and I dress him up at Christmas and Halloween and Easter, and take pictures with him. So he's part of the family.
Okay. And I've got a lot of Beatles memorabilia I see there behind you as
Oh
well.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's great. So back to kind of the questions that I set up for you. I thought maybe we go through a few of those, and because some of those are kind of related to interest in the record collecting community and that type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So you said, so what was the Beatles' first single that you bought? And I guess you have one.
I have only one
Ah,
because everything else was albums. And it was from a German pen pal in 1964. She sent me, I guess you can see the
yeah,
copy of Come Get Me Deiner Hand. I want to hold your hand, and she loves you in German. And
right.
it still has a little, you know, has a little sleeve. And it's a German Odeon.
Yeah, Odeon. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's from, I believe, it's from 64,
yeah.
if I remember
I believe you're
correctly.
right. Yeah, I
And
believe you're right.
yeah, and then on the back, it has, remember as they used to do, they have Cliff Richard and other artists, they advertise their albums. So that
Sure.
was kind of cute. So that was the first and only
Wow.
single that actually I have.
That's interesting because back in the day, singles were bigger than LPs, generally speaking, in sales and everything. Partly because of the
Yeah,
cost, but that's interesting.
yeah. They kind of pushed though when the Beatles came out, they kind of pushed the albums too. Um,
Yep.
I know my girlfriends and I, we basically waited for the albums to come out. And the first album I ever bought, I think you might have
Yeah,
asked me about
sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
it. The first album I ever bought was for my girlfriend's 15th birthday on February 7th, 1964. And it was this one. And
Hmm.
Meet the Beatles. and it's that was the first album that I bought for her birthday. But for me, on the 24th of February in '64, I bought the VJ album, which was introducing the Beatles.
Yeah, and you can see the shadow of George, so that's an original.
Oh, is that an original?
Yeah. There's a shadow on the far right. There's a shadow you can see.
Oh, okay, I didn't even notice that. Hey,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And on the back, it does look like that they glued over this thing or something, because there's the songs, but there's something underneath it. It looks
there was
like
a track. There was tracks were added to that version. There was an earlier version than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is VJ. This was bought, I remember, February 24th, 1964. And believe it or not, it wasn't bought at a record store. Neither of these were. They were bought at the A&P grocery supermarket in Philadelphia, in Southwest Philadelphia. Yeah, so they were the first two albums, actually. So
so we're kind of blending this history with the vinyl community, and so those are called what we call originals or OGs, meaning their value is a lot higher than subsequent reissues.
Okay.
So now VJ, ironically, I grew up in Gary, Indiana. That label was started by an African American couple in Gary, Indiana, and they were selling their records in record stores. So the Beatles record that you have there came out in July of '63 out of VJ. And so I got mine back when they first came out and they were nobody. And so I had heard of them before. And they also had the Four Seasons. The song Sherry was first released on VJ Records.
Okay.
So there's, so those records kind of were in the stores locally. They were kind of super promoting them because it was a local business. I think their offices were in Chicago, but the couple was actually a big entrepreneurial group, and they were African American, which was kind of unique at the time, of course. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how all these things intersected with one another. And they ended up getting sued by EMI Capital, and they had to stop making them, and the whole thing that happened there. But it's an interesting story. So great. So so that's really seeing those originals. That's really, really great. What I asked, what's your favorite song and why? And I know that's hard. That's got to be super hard.
I always tell everybody, it's like trying to pick your favorite child.
Yeah.
It's very hard. I just love them all. I mean, not all,
some more than others, sure.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always liked in my life, I like the slower ones from the beginning and the middle area. And of course, I know everybody says it's corny, but I just love, and I love her. I love them, I love them all. Yesterday, everybody laughs at, but Paul's my favorite, and his ballads mean something very special to me to this day. So, but there's, we can go through the albums too. It's like, oh my gosh, every album has its great songs. But I so like the movie albums, believe it or not. I mean, everybody likes the stuff at the end and this and that, but I loved A Hard Day's Night, the whole album. And I so loved Help. And, Hey, You Have to Hide Your Love Away. And I mean, there's just great songs everywhere, and at all the different times that they wrote. They had no lack of talent when it came to writing songs, that's for sure.
Yeah, they could squeeze a lot into 2 minutes in a song.
Yeah. And the lyrics. I mean, when you think of the lyrics and you think of, they're talking about, they're 22 years old, and the lyrics that they're writing sounds like it's coming from a much, much older person. And, they're very thought provoking in a lot of cases. So it was very interesting that that they could write that way when they were so very young, you know.
Yeah, and I always say they were young but mature in the way they wrote.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah, and yeah. So you mentioned LPs. Is there an LP? You said A Hard Day's Night. I guess that's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. Oh
When I,
gosh, I could go on and on. I like Help too. The whole, album is great. My gosh, I mean, I could go through all of these and say, oh, I like that one. I love that one. Every one of them had, and of course, Sergeant Pepper's was a real, breaker in the whole record industry for music. I think that's an incredible album. And the White Album. I mean, yeah, it's hard to pick favorites with the Beatles. It
yeah.
just is.
Yeah, I just did a video the other day and released it. I got a audiophile version of Sergeant Pepper's that I've been trying
Oh,
to get
wow.
for like 40 years, and I finally got one. And it just it's like a new experience listening to it almost.
Oh
So,
gosh, yeah.
so
I mean, it's amazing.
yeah,
I brought all these albums with me. I mean, I don't know if you want me to
sure, you
hold
can
them up.
sure go ahead. Let's.
The next one after was the Beatles' second album, and that was in '64 still.
Right,
I guess you can see that.
right. Yeah, we
And
can see it perfectly.
yeah, the back on that. And that was Capitol, and it
Yeah,
was high fidelity, you
yeah.
know.
Well, the catalogs were a little mixed up with the UK. So you're
Yeah.
showing the US versions for
I'm showing, yeah, I'm showing you the US versions, but as I go down what I have British versions too,
okay, good. Yeah,
original British versions, because I had a pen pal in England, as I had one in Germany, and the pen pal in England gave me some information about ordering albums from the UK. So I started ordering some of them from the UK. So this is from the States, but this is in stereo now, and that's A Hard Day's Night, and that's '64. And
that's right.
I love the cover. I've always loved the cover on this.
Hmm.
It's one of my favorite covers, and the back is just amazing. And of course, all these albums were bought when the records came out, when the albums came out. So they're
Yeah,
all original
yeah,
buys.
and they're very
Probably
well
the
kept.
first.
Yeah,
No, thank you. Yeah, I
yeah,
made sure I keep them standing up. I really haven't played them much over the years, The next one is Something New, which is also Capitol, and that was also, I think, in '64. That was towards the end of '64, and that is, as I said, that's says also available in regular monophonic. Right. So,
monophonic. Yeah,
yeah, and that has a lot of good songs on it. Plus, it has a German "Come Give Me Deiner Hand" in there too.
hmm
So, woohoo! I'll just put them back here. And this was an interesting album because you didn't see much of it. My mom actually got it for me for Christmas the first year, which was '64, and it is the Beatles story, and it
yeah,
was done on Capitol, and I wasn't too fond of it because it just talked a lot, but
interviews.
it is
Yeah,
nice inside, and talking about a narrative and musical biography of Beatlemania. And that was towards the end. It came out for the Christmas season, if I recall. And it's a two records,
right.
two
Yeah,
albums.
yeah.
So, and also in those days, they still were coming out with these sleeves.
Sure, the
That had,
promo sleeves.
yeah, right. So that was kind of interesting. And then, okay, I'll just continue here on here. Then came the first one for '65, which was Beatles '65.
There you
Um,
go.
Yep. And that was also in high fidelity now, you see. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So that was interesting and had a lot of great songs on it. She's a Woman and rock and roll music. And I collected these as I went away around. This is Beatles 6.
right.
So on the back of that. And this is also says it's recorded in England. which is interesting.
Yeah, that was a lot of times they stamped that on there. Yeah.
And then I've got Help, which was, they really went fancy on this one because it opened,
Gatefold, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is just a full dimensional stereo now.
Yeah. They had to give it some. Yeah, right.
Yeah. New improved. And actually, I got another copy of Help. I don't know why I got two, but I do. So, okay. Now, this is one of the British albums that I ordered from England and came. This is Rubber Soul. And it's shiny and
glossy,
it's EMI Records.
EMI, PC, is it a PCS? Is the number PCS something? Upper right, maybe?
Just says EMI Records. Yeah, PMC.
PMC is mono. That's why I asked. Yeah, that's mono then. Okay.
It's 1267. It says it's also available in stereo. So that's on the back. So
PCS is stereo, yeah.
And this was actually from England.
Right.
And I've just put it over here on this side.
The other side of the ocean.
The next one also was EMI, and it's Beatles for Sale. So,
okay. Yeah.
And and actually it's so funny because going through these today, I noticed one thing. I'm missing a Beatle album that I never bought because I got some of them from England and I thought the songs were already on it. I'm really missing Yesterday and Today. So sadly, I'll have to pick that up somewhere.
Yes.
This is also from England on EMI Records, and it's a Revolver. So, and with a nice shiny cover.
Oh yeah.
And then we're just back with America, which is now we're going to 67, and it's Sergeant Pepper's, and I still got the insert. So
that a girl.
Yeah. Never took it apart. And so that's there. And again, next one was Magical Mystery Tour with the booklet. And Magical Mystery Tour is interesting because the gentleman that I had a fan club for, which I can tell you about, this man right here who was on every Beatle movie, his name Victor Spinetti. And I was co-president of his fan club in Philadelphia that we founded. So, and he was a very nice gentleman. And he was in all the Beatle movies because George Harrison's mother liked him as an actor. So they had to hire him for each Beatle movie.
There you go.
And of course, this is the white album and it has the numbers down here, or that kind of dirty cover, but, it has it also has the stuff inside, which is
right. Poster. Yeah.
Posters and things and whatever. And then quickly Abbey Road, which is a classic. And I just love Abbey Road,
Yeah.
There's incredible songs in this, including Something, which I think is one of the most beautiful songs. I could say that's one of my favorites. And Frank Sinatra had said once that Something was the best love song that he had ever heard and was written ever in 50 years of him listening to music. He said he had never heard a love song like that. That's amazing coming from Frank Sinatra, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And this is just Let It Be. And that was kind of the last thing. And that, so just show it to you quickly.
Sure.
And there was Apple. Okay. So I just wanted to go over that quickly because I know you have a lot of record fans. Okay.
So Yesterday and Today you're missing. That's because that one has that was one that had the Butcher cover controversy.
That's the thing, the Butcher cover. That's the one that, I would really have liked to have. But in the days when I was a teenager, there was no internet. We didn't know about all these things. The only way we found out about, and maybe you can remember a little bit, the only way we found out about what was going on in the music world or, with different rock stars and stuff, was we had, record radio stations, which
Sure.
were pop radio stations.
Oh yeah.
And these disc jockeys were gods, especially in big cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA. So we would listen to those shows day and night and get all of our information. And that's how we found about the Butcher cover. And by that, it was already gone by the time I ran to the store. So I never got it, and I've never picked up a copy of that, sadly.
Yeah. Well, they're worth a lot, and then there's different states if they've put the second cover over it, and you can see a shadow of the other, and it's a whole cottage industry almost,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But
Amazing.
That was obviously a U.S. only release on that one, of course. So okay. So now I've got through your releases question that I had. So that's great. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess I asked you a question about, is there a grail for you? But I guess maybe now it is the yesterday and today that you don't have it, that you'd want to get.
I don't have it. I'm going to have to get that, because all the others I bought, originally when they came out.
Yeah.
And spent my little allowance,
Yeah, I understand.
So I'm gonna have to look for that one, and that's the one. That's the only one.
I'll try to help you find one of those. So
great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
So yeah. So you said you cared for your records. They seem to be in very good condition, and that's great. And you didn't even have like exterior sleeves over them or anything, did you?
No.
Wow.
No. I've kept them actually somebody recommended many years ago to get a moving box, which is when you move houses.
Yeah.
And they're special boxes. They're strong. They're cardboard, but you can set up your albums in them. And that's what I've kept these in for many years.
Yeah, and if you don't pull them out a lot, they won't get that wear. Yeah. But some of those, like the Meet the Beatles, the first one with the black, if you pull that out much, it'll start to get what we call ring wear, from the record on the outside. So
that's true.
Yeah, so that's great that you've kept them up that well for that long. Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of my questions you answered by showing your records, which was great. So yeah. So I did ask you if you could have 3 Beatles related wishes to make. What would they be? And then I said, control yourself. But
yeah. Well, I'd like to meet Paul and Ringo. I've never met them. I never met any of the Beatles, but I did see them in concert 3 times.
Sure.
So, but I didn't meet them. And that's one thing. And the other thing was, I still have on my, my list is to go to Liverpool during Beatle Week, which is every September. And then a lot of my friends who have Beatle books, they sell their books, they're authors, and they sell their books during Beatle Week in September every year in Liverpool. So that's my second one. And the third one actually is pretty nice. I'd like to have tea with Julian Lennon, John's oldest son. He's very interesting guy and very charming. He just turned 60, and which is unbelievable, I know. But it would be very nice to have tea with Julian. So.
Yeah, I really loved that album a lot when it came out. When when he had those hits that came out, Much Too Late for Goodbyes, and it was just kind of a flashback, right? The voice and the kind of close your eyes kind of moments, right? So that's a great one. I hadn't thought of that one, but he would be very interesting. And I haven't really followed his career much to know what he's done, since that initial push that he had. I think I've seen albums of his, but I just haven't really say that I've heard any of them.
Yeah. He's put out an album recently, which was the first that he's done in a long time. He works a lot for the environment, and goes all over the world and speaks about things with what has to do with the environment and peace and stuff. And it seems like he lives on the Riviera. I know he does live on the Riviera, and very, very interesting, charming gentleman, actually.
Yeah.
So
Great.
the
So,
oldest boy.
so you mentioned Liverpool. So I was in the UK about a month and a half ago and did the walking tour. Uh,
Ah,
and so a Hard Day's Night, we start at the station where they did a Hard Day's Night, the filming
oh,
there, you know, and the
right,
one, and what was it, Georgia? One of the guys starts to trip and fall down along the
right.
sidewalk. And yeah.
Yeah.
And so the guy that did that walking tour, and I think you know who he is, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember his name.
I'm trying to remember his name. He's actually on my Facebook, and
Yeah.
he also has bought a Beatles store in he used to partly own it. Now he owns it in London as well.
Yeah.
And I picture a face in front of me, but I can't think of his name.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I think we actually saw that store. Now that I
Oh,
think
okay.
about it. Yeah, because he
Yeah.
mentioned something about ownership.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he was very knowledgeable, and it was a really it was a great part of the trip. I mean, I
Oh,
really
I bet.
yeah, I mean he plus it was great exercise.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. But that
Yeah.
was exciting though to see all these places that you've seen on film or you've heard about, and then you could just walk it. That's perfect, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it was a well spent time to do that. So so you said you have some other friends, that you have two other ladies that you interact with. Tell us that little story.
Oh yeah, they're actually very interesting. I've met a lot of people at Beatle Fests over the years, and I've become friends with these ladies and some of the guys too. And one of my oldest friends from Philly, I didn't know her during the Beatle time. Her name is Pat Mancuso, and she actually had the only George Harrison fan club, official fan club in America. She went over to England and got him to sign the charter. So she is one of the ladies that has written two books about the George Harrison fan club, official George Harrison fan club. So we're just, we bunk in together at Beatle Fest. And then there's another lady that I know named Marty Edwards, and she's from Chicago originally. And she was president of the Chicagoland Beatle fan club.
Ah,
So we all got together in Chicago a few years ago and we traded stories and found out she wrote a book too, which was called 16 and 64. So her book is about meeting the Beatles on stage and giving them a plaque from the fan club back in when the Beatles came around in 64, 65, I guess it was 64. And Pat's is about her fan club. And my book is it's about Beatlemania, but it's also about the Victor Spinetti fan club. So we had a lot in common because we had fan clubs in common. We also, both of them had met the Beatles. I never did. And there were a lot of funny things that we had in common. So we thought, we should band together and do podcasts and stuff at little seminars at Beatle Fest. So we call ourselves the three Beatle Babes. So, and we're actually going to do a podcast in 3 weeks again. And if you would ever like to have us on, they
I'd love
have
to.
incredible stories. I mean, just Pat's stories you won't believe, and then Marty's stories too. And they were presidents of fan clubs. So it's a great little group. And, unfortunately, we all live in different areas of the country. So it's hard for us to get together, except at Beatle Fests, which we try and talk about the three Beatle Babes.
Right. So is it Marty that was from Chicago?
Yes. Yeah. Marty Edwards. But she's living now in Arizona.
Okay.
And Pat Mancuso lives in Pennsylvania outside of Philly. And of course, I'm in Texas. So we're spread out.
Yeah. So Marty would have experience like me, because the big radio stations where I grew up were in Chicago.
Yes.
WLS being the biggest one.
Yeah.
And so she would have heard the same disc jockeys and kind of
Oh,
had the
yeah, yeah,
same experience. So it would be. I've got a lot of the old top 40 charts that the radio station would put out every week.
yes,
That have the Beatles
yeah,
like in succession, like the
yeah.
almost the whole top 10. Kind of thing. Yeah. So
If you
those were fun
wait
times.
1 second, I'm gonna
Sure.
run out for just a second because here we go. I actually have a poster right here in my Beatle boudoir, which is called the Three Beatle Babes. And it was actually drawn by Marty. She's an artist
Oh,
too. So
nice.
she's talking about the three of us and what books we wrote, and here we are, the Three Beatle Babes.
I
It's
think I
just
have a
funny.
picture of you with a T-shirt that has that, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. She actually had them printed up in Arizona for us, so
Sweet.
which was really sweet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the Three Beatle Babes, and we, as I said, we're really fun to talk to because we all were the same age at the same time,
Right.
so
Right.
in different places, so it's kind of fun.
So that's part one. Stay tuned for part two, where Patti gets into the influence of the Beatles in society overall, looking at her special fan club she set up for Victor Spinetti, who was an actor in all of the Beatles movies, and looking at Beatles Fest coming in 2024, which is going to be the 60th anniversary of the Beatles landing at JFK Airport in February of 1964. So if you aren't a subscriber, I'd ask you consider doing so by clicking on the bell below and click the all option at the top to get notifications. A thumbs up on this video is always welcome, as are comments. Any background you have with the Beatles, any special stories you'd like to share, love to read those and give some feedback. So as always, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time at the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. Take care, everybody.